This is a little bit about what life lessons is about. And here's a random chapter called Homesick. Here's another old family story from our Reid clan. Our grandparents lived in Spring Hill, about a 30-minute drive from our house, in an old stone pre-Civil War home that still stands out there on the one-lane country road to this day. At the time of this particular incident, sometime in the late 40s, I'd say, they still had no phone service out that far in the county. The closest phone was behind the counter of an old country store more than 2 miles away. The summer my brother Harold was about 8 or 9 years old, he got it in his head that he wanted to go out to Grandma and Granddaddy's house and spend a week. And no amount of "are you sure?" or a whole week would dissuade him in the least. So Mom and Dad put his trusty old Schwinn bicycle in the trunk of the car, along with his ball glove and cap pistols, and dropped him off, and he waved a vigorous goodbye to them from the front porch. All was well in heart and mind until bedtime. In order for him to get to his bedroom, he had to walk through the parlor, and there atop an old grand piano sat a framed picture of our mother. Sadness, homesickness, and nostalgia hit him so hard and so suddenly right in the stomach. He went to bed, but he never slept a second. The next morning he was up early with a master plan swirling in his mind. He jumped on his bike and rode like a hard wind, pedaling for all he was worth toward that little country store. He called home and poured out his heart. Now, if Mom had answered the phone, she would have probably used this as a teaching moment and lovingly cajoled him into staying another night or two. And all would have been well, and this story would have a different ending. But our dad answered, and being the old softy he was, within the hour, Harold's bike and suitcase were in the back of the car, and he and Dad were heading back home to Stanton. I have felt the pangs of homesickness, and I'm guessing maybe you have too. It's a lonesome agony that won't let go of you. You get things in your mind that won't pass through, and there is no peace with the longings that you just can't shake. Many things can make us homesick. A picture, like that one on the piano, a song, the smell of a certain food cooking, simply being alone, or remembering a favorite time in life or a favorite person. And those feelings have been with us for centuries. Even King David had them. Israel was at war with the Philistines, so what else is new? It seems these two nations were always fighting one another. This time, the Philistines had set a stronghold around the town of Bethlehem. King David was camped out in the cave of Adullam when 3 of his mighty men came to check on him. In the course of their conversation, in a moment of reflection, and yes, homesickness, David's mind went back to the better times of his childhood. Bethlehem was his hometown, the place where he'd grown up and tended his father's sheep on the farm. And in a weak and aching moment of longing, the king said out loud, "Oh, that someone would get me a drink of water from the well near the gate of Bethlehem." You might even say, yeah, he was thinking out loud, but these 3 faithful warriors, Joshua, Eleazar, and Shammah, took to heart the request of their king. They left him, and 2 Samuel tells us they broke through the Philistine lines, drew water from the well near the gate of Bethlehem, and carried it back to David. These were mighty men, loyal men, who were at the call of their commander-in-chief's smallest, most impulsive wish. More love and respect you could not ask for. But then, when they returned with the water, David refused to drink it. Instead, he poured it out on the ground before the Lord and said, "Far be it from me, O Lord, to do this. Is it not the blood of men who went at the risk of their lives?" It looks like David had as much love and respect for these soldiers as they had for him. As much as he wanted to taste a sip of that sweet nectar from his youth, he sacrificed it in honor of the jeopardy and endangerment these men had put themselves in at his whim. Although he was suffering from a homesickness for more peaceful times in his life, he poured it out before the Lord. Is it any wonder that God is quoted over in Acts by saying, I have found David, son of Jesse, a man after my own heart. He will do everything I want him to do. If you have never felt that forlorn feeling in the pit of your stomach, I hope you never will. But what David and Harold and some of you and I have felt is expressed beautifully by my favorite old poet, Edgar A. Guest. Here are just a few opening lines from his poem aptly titled, Homesick. It's tough when you are homesick in a strange and distant place. It's anguish when you're hungry for an old familiar face, and yearning for the good folks and the joys you used to know when you're miles away from friendship is a bitter sort of woe. Hope you've enjoyed this chapter, and I hope you enjoy the book.